Welcome back to the shop. My name is Ethan. Today we are making an overly complicated replacement for what is normally a very simple item, costing at worst a little over a penny. Stick around and I'll tell you how you can get a set of these with a custom exotic hardwood base for just the cost of shipping, very similar to my last giveaway. If you don't know, a grill pin is used to hold bacon to pretty much anything that you would want to grill. It's a replacement for a toothpick, but it's way cooler. Anyways, before we get into it, let's talk about the design. Before we get into it, let's talk about the design parameters that I set before making tooling for this project. I have been working on this in the background since February to try to figure out the best possible way to meet those requirements. You're welcome. Number one, we are essentially replacing a toothpick, so we need to find ways to make it worth the cost to most people. So we can guess by nature of the stainless that it's not going to burn or snap or give you a splinter, but it also just needs to look really snazzy. In addition to that, we are using a high quality 316 stainless, which is both food grade and corrosion resistant. Yeah, I remember. Number two, it needs to be as affordable as possible. So to make that happen, we're going to do some faux machining. We're going to be doing some faux machining. We're going to be doing some work cold. We're going to be developing some more complicated tooling to make the forging way faster, and we're going to experiment with some new finishing techniques. Number three, and finally, it just needs to work well. We already covered that by nature of the stainless, it's not going to break, it's not going to splinter, none of those things. But what we do want to know is when we turn it upside down, is the smooth stainless just going to drop out? That would really suck. We also want to know, are all these little decorative heads that I put on just going to turn out to be a big pain in the butt when you're actually using them? All that and more in testing later, but right now, let's get into it. The first step is to cut the material to length. A rod parter would be ideal for separating these, but I can't find one in my area that's for sale that's even halfway decent. So instead, we use this weird little thing as both a guide for cutting and marking how far to grind the tip. It is pretty sketchy as the stainless rod is only 1/16 of an inch and can rotate in my fingers, but it's halfway fast and it works, alright? Sue me. Don't sue me. Next, we pull off some good old faux machining, where we first deburr the back end of the pin and then grind the point using a drill and a 120 grit belt, going back to the Sharpie line that we put on there. Then I like to polish with a worn 220 and put a final tip on that's blunt enough it won't be too fragile or prone to burning in the forge. Then we roll over to this bending jig and shape the loop cold. One of the main advantages to doing these things cold is that I don't need to try to hold on to the tiny little pins with the tongs or wait for them to heat or cool. As long as my hands are still functioning, I can keep making these as fast as I can bend them. Now on to the forging. It takes me a while to warm up to doing these in one heat, but after making a few dozen, I can do most of them in just 1 to 3 hits. A press of some kind with a depth stop would be ideal for this, but I don't have one, so we're testing this setup for the power hammer. So we have this swinging arm, which holds the fuller, complete with an adjustable pivoting depth stop, so they both come out of the way so that we can bring the flatter over without needing to take another heat. We use the flatter for both straightening and to give it another crispy facet to add interest. Each part of the tooling setup is held in the vertical position using small magnets to make sure they don't fall down when using the flatter, and then self-destruct the whole thing. The forging turned out to be about the fastest part of the whole process. Next up is the finishing, which honestly is still a work in progress. I wish I could find some kind of a tumbler setup that would make it so I didn't have to do each one individually and could just do them in a big batch, but I haven't figured that out yet. If you have any suggestions for media that will get in all these tiny little fullers and cut the hard stainless scale, leave those in the comments below. For now, I soak them in muriatic acid to loosen and dissolve the scale, finishing with a quick cruise on the wire wheel to polish them. I used a tiny wire wheel from a Dremel tool in my drill press, using high speed and low pressure to clean the inside of the little loop, before moving over to the big wheel to do the profile and faces. As I slowly bumble my way through working with stainless, I started using a stainless wire wheel to try to reduce the amount of iron particles and free irons imparted to the surface of the material while working it. These wheels seem to be an okay compromise of cost and longevity. There's a link to that in the description if you want to check them out. This stainless wheel is a fair bit softer and finer than its carbon steel counterpart that I'm used to using, which works out well because that helps get inside of the loops and stuff. And also just because when things are this small, my fingers are in the wire wheel just the whole time. So that works out quite well for me. Finally, we passivate them. What is passivation, you ask? Well, from my new and limited understanding, it's basically removing free ions from the surface of the material and corroding the nickel in a layer over the surface which is corrosion resistant or passive. Yeah, that's about how much sense that made to me. If you have any pro tips on that, leave them in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Though clearly the biggest advantage of this is just that I got to use my backpacking burner. So totally worth it. Now we go test these bad boys, but first, I forgot what I was going to say. Why did I make the pins this design? Well, basically because they match my skewers. I was going to say something else. Because they match my skewers. I really love the design on these, and the pins are basically just a smaller version with different but complementing fuller patterns. I knew when I first made the skewers that I wanted to expand that concept into a larger line of products, and this is the first step in that direction. There are a lot of forged drill tools out there, from railroad spikes and the like, including my own, but I think that this shows a different side of what you can do with forging, even in just the grill tool arena. Also, you should finish watching, but one lucky person is going to get a set of 10 of these for the cost of shipping with a custom exotic hardwood base. That is just a listing on my website. The first person there gets their choice, and then once someone has picked it up, it's gone. If you aren't the lucky one to grab them, don't worry, you can still get 10% off my skewers, or the pins, or both. Discount code below, and here, there, and up there. Maybe there too. Without further ado, let's grill some stuff. Oh, sorry. Grill some stuff. Alright, I have no great portfolio of grilling, but here's what I do. Wrap, pin, and done. No splinters, no breaking, no burning off. As you can see, the pins stay in crazy secure on lots of stuff. The fullers add some good grippy texture, and as the grease sears to it, they stick even better. I was paranoid up until doing my first test run that the heads were going to be really irritating, but honestly they didn't really bother me. It kind of depends on what you're grilling and how it's prepared, but for stuff like the shrimp, the asparagus, it works super well. The pin heads, they fit down below the grates if you do need to turn that way, but it really didn't bother me, so that was relieving. You can also pick stuff up by the pins, which turned out to be actually really handy. I really liked that. So going back to the design parameters that we laid out at the beginning of the video, we've created something quite elegant. We've created it about as fast as we can, and we've created something that works quite well. So you don't have to use just one tool to cook your food and pick it out of your teeth, you animal you. As a side note, the skewers work quite well. I've had nothing but good reports. To turn them like a little lift and roll usually does the trick for me. Especially if you add some bacon. I like to lace it around my other stuff. The grease sears just like the pins, and it holds very well for being round bar. I can't say that I have that much trouble with it. I just prepare my food with that in mind, and it always goes quite well for me. Anyhow, thanks for watching. If these are popular and I sell enough sets, I do want to make either wooden bases or like little leather pouches, so you can just toss them in a drawer, bing bang boom, just as a standard offering, but that's up to you guys. Leave a comment on which of those you would prefer. If you like this kind of content, hit that thumbs up. You may want to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss any new videos, as I have more projects like this in my head. The next tooling setup hopefully won't take me months to finish. It's been like 7-ish months now, I guess. So I may be able to share more of that process, which would be awesome. Also, don't forget you can snag a set of these with 10% off. All that is in the description. Take care. Hammer on, folks. Discard that last video.